headquarters of Telesat English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Emiko Omoli. Welcome to the program. The Spanish Prime Minister is now in Costa Rica. He was met on the tarmac by the Costa Rican Vice President. He's already met with President Carlos Alvarado. Later today, both will host a meeting about the environment and climate change.
Two large areas of issues that we will be addressing. The issue related to democracy and issues of the region linked to the issues of democracy and sustainable development. The decarbonization plan, all energy issues are like the large areas.
Well, Sanchez was in Bogota on Thursday meeting with President Iván Duque. He offered any necessary support to push forward a peace deal between Colombia and the ELN.
Spain will make itself available to the Colombian government. Anything Colombia needs from Spain to consolidate peace, we will say yes to. We will be with our Colombian brothers so that the peace deal with the ELN will be a reality sooner rather than later.
In Argentina, the currency has continued to plummet despite a dramatic move by the central bank to raise interest rates to 60%. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Roth, has the details.
Saludos en estudio, saludos a toda la audiencia de Telesur.
Another critical day in Argentina as the dollar again shot up and reached 42 pesos. Remember that on Wednesday, President Mauricio Macri issued a recorded message with the intention of bringing confidence and tranquility to the markets, announcing that the International Monetary Fund would advance funds to comply with the financial programs of 2019. After that announcement, the dollar went up 34 pesos and 50 cents. 7.5% higher. Today it reached 42 pesos. The Minister of Finances announced that next Monday new economic measures would be announced and that he would travel to the United States to meet the International Monetary Fund to reach an agreement. That is the same agreement which President Macri on Thursday said had already been agreed to, only for his own ministers to come out and clarify that it is actually an intended agreement on the part of the national government. Back to you in the studio.
Sabrina Roth reporting that. Now, it's thought the IMF could demand swifter cuts in spending as a condition for releasing its funds early. On Thursday evening, thousands of teachers, workers and students from Argentina's public universities protested against the government's austerity measures.
Members of over 57 public universities are demanding a decent wage increase as they march against the budget crisis. After a 72-hour strike, protesters gathered outside the National Congress.
There is no state policy in place for public education. In a meeting addressing higher education and honouring 100 years of university reform, public education was, again, declared a universal human right and a state obligation. The state must support public education from primary school up to university.
Some of the demands are inflation-based salary increases, regularization of hired teachers and ad honorem teachers, a teachers training fund, and increased public university budget.
People are protesting against the crisis being faced by the science and technology as well as university sectors. Today, specifically, is the crisis of the National University, which is reflected in teacher salary cuts, which the government aim to slash by 15%.
Since February, teachers are refusing to accept insecure agreements made during negotiations with the provincial and national governments.
Students are spreading the strikes and discussing the continuation of the demonstrations. They are in a major disagreement with the government. A government that continues with meetings but without hearing the general complaints. A government that does not give answers and says the only possibility is to make cuts, which will lead to the closing of the public university.
Mauricio Macri's government is plunging into a deep crisis and does not want to accept it. Supposedly in the next few hours, the unions will meet with the Education Minister Alejandro Finocchiaro, but the unions are not optimistic that their complaints will be heard.
Well, opposition supporters in Honduras have taken to the streets to demand the resignation of President Juan Orlando Hernandez. Several groups joined the march from the National University. They blame Hernandez for the worsening poverty in Honduras. They say his re-election earlier this year was illegal. They're demanding justice for those killed in the protests that followed.
The re-election is a clear violation of the Constitution of the Republic and what they did to repress the protests against the re-election, and the fraud was a crime against humanity.
Ecuadorian police have clashed with protesters at a march to promote the rights of immigrants. The march is in opposition to a nationalist group protesting against Venezuelan migrants. The police moved in to separate the two groups, but then turned on the anti-fascist demonstrators, blocking their path and firing tear gas.
We are defending the freedom of movement for all people, because we all have the right to work with dignity. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all people who have the same rights regardless of where we are from. We all have rights that must be respected by a government that is currently responsible for the repression we suffer.
The country is completely disorganized. You can find 4 separate groups protesting against an unstable government, a government that has no clear position to mediate and to create unity in the country. It is very worrying because from here we can see that Latin America must rise again. From Ecuador, things must change radically. We can see political dinosaurs engaging in fascism and extreme capitalism, and the people is rising against it.
Time for a short break now. Join us again in a few moments.
Telesur brings you special interviews with social and political personalities. Monday, from Washington. Tuesday, from Mexico. Wednesday, from Caracas. Thursday, from Quito. Friday, from Havana. Analysis about our continent's reality. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. Political tension is on the rise in Brazil. Supporters of left-wing candidates are being threatened with violence by members of the far right. Our correspondent in Sao Paulo, Ignacio Limas, has the story.
At 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon, a member of left-wing presidential candidate Guillermo Boulos' campaign was talking on the phone outside campaign headquarters when a car stopped next to her and a man inside shouted, "Screw Boulos, here we support Bolsonaro." "Was that fascist?" asked the campaign member, and that's when the man pointed a gun at her. A complaint was filed and the perpetrator's license plate recorded with the police in Sao Paulo's Pinheiros neighborhood.
Campaign committee members, especially those working for presidential candidates, have special protection under Brazilian law, so a threat of this magnitude against them is a very serious issue.
In addition to this, 2018 has seen a rise in violent attacks against members of the left wing. A few months ago, buses in the Lula caravan were fired upon by unknown assailants. Human rights activist and councilwoman Marielle Franco was assassinated, and recently, councilwoman Taliria Petrone had her campaign material seized by a policeman who also pointed a gun at her. All of the attacks were against figures of the Brazilian left wing.
Bolsonaro has all the political responsibility for this attack. He has encouraged the use of firearms. He takes the hands of children and have them do gun gestures, normalizing these actions. The seeds of Bolsonaro, planted so long ago, are being harvested today.
Both neoliberal candidate Geraldo Acmin and far-right Jair Bolsonaro advocate for the free use of weapons. This in a country that reached a record 62,500 homicides in 2016, the same year of the parliamentary coup against then-President Dilma Rousseff.
Well, young people have become major targets of drug violence in Mexico. We have more in this report.
Paulina must walk these streets every day to get to her school in Mexico City. She must then go to work in the neighboring city of Pachuca. While on her daily journey, she has had violent encounters with criminal gangs. She doesn't know anyone who has not been a victim of violence.
They take our backpacks. They look through our clothes. They even kidnap people.
Adrian also lives in this municipality. He too has fallen prey more than 10 times. He doesn't believe an increase in police officers will have any real impact on crime.
I think it's more important to promote education, because most people drop out of a school and they have nothing to do. That is something real.
A study reveals that Ecatepec is one of the most dangerous places. The crime levels there even surpass other cities plagued by the warring drug cartels.
There
are people going from their houses to their jobs or even to the market. They also break into homes. Families are hurting deeply, but these acts of violence are not in the news headlines.
He still holds the hope that political change will translate into action.
There has been a change of federal and municipal parties. It will be very interesting to see if this will make a difference.
The president-elect has promised economic aid to young people. The motto of that program is scholars, not gunmen.
In El Salvador, the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front is hoping to secure an election victory. Presidential candidate Hugo Martinez has just hit the campaign trail. Our correspondent has the details.
Martinez listened to the concerns of the people when he visited various municipalities. He was accompanied by his vice presidential running mate, Karina Sosa. The elections will take place next February. The party will officially present its candidates on its September convention. We go back to you.
Ernesto Avalos reporting there. Well, Bolivian President Evo Morales has inaugurated the 8th line of the cable car in La Paz. It will be open to the public in September. Let's go to our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, for more.
Buenos días.
The 8th line of the teleférico that will run between La Paz and El Alto will start operating in September. As is tradition, it transported its first passenger, President Evo Morales, who inaugurated the new project. The first line of the teleférico was launched in 2014 and was a big success both as means of transportation and as a tourist attraction. It was such a success that the government decided to build 2 more lines that were equally successful. Then came the launch of the second phase, the construction of 7 new lines. When it began its operation, the 3rd line made it to the Guinness Book of Records as the highest and most extensive teleférico for public transportation in the world. Since the lines of the teleférico are interconnected, they have tremendously reduced traffic jams and have become a popular mode of travel and an alternative to underground. It would have been impossible to build an underground transportation system in La Paz, as more than 260 rivers flow through the city. The first 7 lines carry between 170,000 and 190,000 passengers every day. About 147 million passengers traveled on them between 2014 and 2018. The cost of this project is $740 million, and all of the 10 lines will come into full operation in the first quarter of 2019.
Freddie Morales reporting there from La Paz. The Trinidad and Tobago government says it is prepared to pay close to $150 million in severance for workers affected by the Petrotrin oil refinery closure. The government announced plans to close the 101-year-old refinery earlier this week. Workers over the age of 55 will receive an early retirement package. The package for younger workers is still being worked out. There is no exact date set for the closure.
The figure will be huge. It will be large because, first and foremost, the base salary of Petrotrin is big. So, because any calculation obviously will have to be on base salary.
Are you talking about the hundreds of millions or $1 billion plus? You say huge.
I would say it will be significantly more than $1 billion. The termination benefits for the workers, the packages, could be in excess of $1 billion.
And that is to be paid by taxpayers, yes?
It's part of the cost structure of this reorganization. But that is a small figure compared to the hemorrhaging lost on an annual basis.
Well, with all that going on, it is also Independence Day in Trinidad and Tobago. You are watching live pictures from the 56th Independence Day Parade at Queen's Park, Savannah in Port of Spain. This year's parade is the first for Trinidad and Tobago's first female president, Paula May Weeks. The country gained independence from Britain back in 1962. Time for another short break. Join us again in a few moments.
Queremos verdad, reparación integral, pero sobre todo justicia, pero justicia social.
How many ways there are to tell a story? The different perspectives of our nations are on Telesur documentaries. Sundays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Dutch police have shot a person suspected of stabbing 2 people outside Amsterdam's main train station. The victims and the suspect are now in the hospital. The station had to be shut down as police responded to the incident. Commuters looked on in horror amid the heavy police presence. And we'll bring you more updates on that story as soon as we have it. The head of Nigeria's Senate, Bukola Saraki, has announced he will run in February's presidential elections. That makes him the highest profile contender to the incumbent Muhammadu Buhari. Saraki quit Buhari's All Progressives Congress, or APC, and returned to his old party, the PDP. He is Nigeria's 3rd most senior politician. His challenge raises the pressure on Buhari, changing the electoral game in the country.
I hereby announce my intention to run for the office of President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in the elections of 2019 on the platform of the People's Democratic Party, I do this with a firm conviction that I have the good case to secure inclusive growth for Nigeria and Nigerians.
A Kenyan artist is turning junk into art. Evans Ngure's home in Nairobi doubles up as a workshop. There he makes art from garbage. The 29-year-old junk artist collects items at dumps, but friends and neighbors also bring him trash. His work represents the need for recycling and the protection of the environment. Some of his pieces sell for hundreds of dollars. Some news further afield now. According to national estimates, 27% of Spain's population is living below the poverty line. Infrequent work and low wages have created a new wave of working poor.
The current minimum wage does not guarantee a decent quality of life for workers. The number of people living in poverty increased significantly in the past 5 years. This is according to the latest Eurostat report.
3 out of 10 who are jobless are foreigners. It is young people and women who have been hit the hardest by unemployment.
The representing unions say workers' rights are not being protected.
Workers are each time less protected. In Spain, our employment mechanisms are obsolete, which is a clear cause for this crisis. It is true that we have more workplaces, but the system is obsolete and weak.
There is only talk about economic recovery. However, there's no end to the crisis in sight.
There has been a recovery, but it hasn't affected the people living in extreme poverty and hasn't allowed us to reduce inequality. It actually keeps growing. We already reached the highest levels in this crisis, a 6.6 gap between the richest and the poorest. This number is way lower in the EU.
Workers have lost their purchasing power.
We have inflation rates that are turning salaries useless. Last year, the salary increase was 0.1% higher than inflation. But this year, we have 2% more inflation, which means that workers have lost 2.2% of their salaries during this year alone.
And labour unions believe the solution lies in supporting stable contracts, salaries, and bringing back social welfare that was lost during the crisis.
Time now for some other stories from around the world.
The Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB, has confirmed the arrival of one of its nationals from Germany after fighting in Syria. The 31-year-old man was involved with a Russian militant group called the Caucasus Emirate during his time in Russia. He then fled to Syria and fought with rebel militias in 2013. According to the FSB, he went to Germany with a fake ID and tried to claim asylum. The German police finally arrested him last year. His identity is still unknown. An activist who was on hunger strike outside the Bahraini embassy has been rushed to hospital. Ali Mushaima is the son of Hassan Mushaima, leader of the Haq movement in opposition to the government in Bahrain. Ali's father is currently imprisoned and being denied medical treatment as his health deteriorates. Ali began his hunger strike in support of his father at the beginning of August. He stresses that he will continue until the rights of every prisoner in Bahrain are upheld.
I have no choice. I mean, I don't want to sleep in the street, of course. I want to be with my wife and my daughter. But I tried, different things. I wrote a letter to MB. I contact different human rights organizations, but nothing changed. I feel my father is dying. They are killing my father slowly, because when you deny 70 years old man from his medicine, his body will not take. We will not take it.
2 politicians have been arrested trying to flee Uganda. Former pop star turned politician and outspoken critic of the government Bobby Wine is one of them. According to the men, they were fleeing to seek treatment for injuries they received while allegedly being tortured in custody. Their treatment by the police sparked widespread protest. They stand accused of throwing stones at a presidential convoy during the political campaign in August.
Coca-Cola is set to buy coffee chain Costa for $5.1 billion, paying more than was expected. Buying Costa, the soft drinks giant, wants to branch into the healthier drinks market and challenge the dominance of Starbucks. Coca-Cola even bought the debt of the coffee chain and plans to accelerate its expansion. Thousands turned out in Detroit on Thursday night for an Aretha Franklin tribute concert. More than 40 artists performed some of her greatest hits 2 weeks after her death. The US music icon died of cancer on August 16th at the age of 76. Her grandchildren spoke briefly, delivering heartfelt thanks on behalf of their family and grandmother. Her funeral will begin in a few hours in Detroit and is expected to last at least 6 hours. We've come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram for Telesur English. I'm Emiko Molu. Thank you for watching.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along and find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that